Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing great. We welcome you this morning to the Columbia Chamber's Issues Committee. And, September 1st is here, and it's a big day for us at the Chamber because it's our first day of our fiscal year. And I know it's odd. I don't understand why we started a fiscal year in September 1, but we are. Would also, let me just take executive privilege here and welcome our guests with us. But most importantly, we had a switch yesterday. Kim Wilkerson was our chair yesterday. Today, she's got the coveted award of being past chair. Tim Arnold, our new chair for Colonial Life, we welcome him. We'd also like to welcome Leslie Johnson with Bank of America and Mayor Steve Benjamin, who really needs no introduction. Everybody knows Steve. So I welcome everybody here, and let me kick it over to Kim Wilkerson to lead this discussion today.
Good morning, everyone. As my brother-in-law likes to say, it sums up Columbia, and it definitely is. So we're ready to get rolling this morning. It absolutely is my personal privilege to be here this morning and to join you, as the immediate past chair is also pretty nice, Carl. So Tim, we appreciate you being on today. Today really is about us as a business community having a really serious conversation. You know, how we're feeling in this moment. All of us have different personal experiences and backgrounds that we bring to our lives. And one of the things that I get to do at Bank of America is help lead a team of people as we deliver for our clients across the state. But I also get to do things like host courageous conversations. And as we have been in this pandemic and we have started to see the real passion around racial injustice, I have been not only honored but humbled to lead some of those conversations with teammates across the state. And just last week we held a conversation where it was very raw. It was incredibly real, and we all learned. We listened and we learned. So today is about all of us being able to listen and learn. Not everyone is willing to have the conversation. They're not there yet, and that's okay. That's one of the things we learn from all of this. But clearly there is a lot to learn. And so today's conversation really is about embracing inclusion in our community and in our businesses. We must be able to talk about it. We have to be able to address even what's uncomfortable. We just started the conversation before we joined all of you about how well the mayor and the chief of police are working together in the Midlands, and we are so incredibly grateful to have both of their leadership. So I'm delighted to be joined today by my friend Steve Benjamin. Mayor, we really appreciate you being here. Tim Arnold is the president and CEO of Colonial Life and really needs no introduction either. He also is today the chair of the Columbia Chamber. So Tim, welcome. And then it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce to you one of my favorite colleagues in the world, Leslie Johnson, who is a human resources executive with Bank of America. And you all have a real privilege to be able to hear her wise advice today. I'm especially proud of the leadership that Bank of America has provided during this time. I will tell you that I celebrated my 40th anniversary at the bank. I started when I was 8, just in case anybody wants to know. I'm not even 50 yet, but my 40th anniversary at the bank on June the 2nd. And on June the 2nd, we announced a $1 billion commitment, and that's with a B, over 4 years, to really address issues related to racial inequality. And I want to make sure that you understand the particular focus of that. It really is around health, jobs, training, upskilling, supporting small businesses, and housing. And all of those are critical things that we need in the Midlands. And we believe that the power of our people we are really able to build a workplace where employees can bring their voices, where all of us can have a conversation. And today and going forward, as we all put the topics together and put them on the table and listen and ask hard questions, let's encourage these conversations inside of our businesses, reach out to people, check on them, see how they're doing. So throughout the dialogue, if you have any questions, you can enter them. The chamber staff will be monitoring. You can see the feed is beginning, so feel free to bring any questions forward that you want to ask. But I'm going to start this morning with Mayor Benjamin. So Mayor, how do you believe that Columbia is promoting diversity, equality, and inclusion? And can you share some of the examples and discuss with us some of the efforts you all have been doing and compare them to other cities and what we see on the news every night?
Wow, I'm going to try not to compare to too many other cities. It seems like we're all drinking water from a fire hose every single day. Obviously, the discussions around diversity, around inclusion, around building compassionate cities that recognize the value and dignity of every individual. It's something that's been important in Columbia for a very long time. We have the benefit of being the home to, obviously, the state's largest Carnegie One research institution, which brings a great deal of diversity to historically Black colleges and universities. The Army's largest initial entry base in the world, where we train more than half of the Army's soldiers because of state government. We have representation from nearly every one of the 194 sovereign nations of the world, along with obviously the history, the original sin of America. We have a significant African American population, which either going to turn into, depending on your type of leadership, either this incredible melange of conflict and strife, or a place that works together very well, because you every single day you highlight the importance of human dignity. You highlight the importance, strength, and policies that speak to inclusion and recognizing we are all not of one faith. However, the Judeo-Christian traditions loom large here. I tell people that, how can I not be a mayor of second chances if I follow a God of second chances? And the reality is that our policies that we put in place at the City of Columbia, that we live by and that we encourage the business community to live by, when or if it shouldn't be mandated, speak every single day to the values of inclusion in our contracting, in our purchasing. We ask our partners to live within the values of the city, whether it's as we are issuing public debt or building public infrastructure. If we're putting policies in place that give people an opportunity, there are a whole lot of things that people disagree on in the world in which we live in today. But I don't believe that anyone disagrees that maybe the very best social program you could possibly have is to give a man an opportunity to actually earn a good living, to take care of himself, take care of herself, take care of your family. So we pass policies that encourage second chances, give people a chance who may have run afoul of the American economic system or the criminal justice system even before they finish puberty. Where we are a ban-the-box city. But I do believe that it really starts with people who understand it, recruiting people who realize that we are greater than the sum total of our parts, and speak in a language that works to bring people together every day. We're human, we're fallible, we'll make mistakes, but it is important that in this world in which we live right now, when you have words of hate and vitriol and anger and fighting on the news every single day, that you have men and women in leadership and elected and appointed leadership positions that constantly not only hammer messages of love and duty and compassion and inclusion, but who actually live it and pass policies and encourage each and every one of us to live up to our better angels. It is I'll say this and I'll be quiet. It's even more difficult in the world we live in right now. We are facing the greatest pandemic We've seen since 1918 the greatest economic disruption in an election year. The Dow had a good August, but we saw what nearly 5% drop in GDP in the first quarter, 33% contraction in the economy in the second quarter, probably the greatest in election year since 1932 or 1876, depending on who you talk to, and the greatest social unrest around structural racism and police violence and other issues since 1968, all wrapped up into 2 quarters in 2020. What a heck of a year. And so making sure that these values that ought to define a city, that I believe should define our city, stay front and center and articulated in every single thing we do. It's a challenge, but it has to be intentional. It has to be part of who you are. You have to work every single day to make it a part of your culture. And we endeavor to do that at the City of Columbia.
Thank you for your leadership there. You're so right. It's being willing to look forward and to really work together to make it happen. So thank you for that. We really do appreciate you very, very much. So Tim, the next question is for you. Can you tell us what you're doing at Colonial around diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and how do you see that impacting our community's culture?
Great. Thanks, Kim. Good morning, everyone. And let me first say it's a real honor and a privilege to be a part of this panel with Mayor Benjamin and Ms. Johnson. Mayor, I'd echo Kim's comments. We appreciate your leadership during these really challenging times. You're definitely having an impact. And I think I speak for the community when we say thank you. And for Leslie and Kim, I'm so impressed by Bank of America's financial commitment. $1 billion is a lot of money, regardless of the size of your company. So congratulations to you all. Thank you for that commitment. In terms of what we're doing here at Colonial Life, I would characterize as we're making progress, but we still have a lot of work to do. So I'll start just by talking about our employees. Overall, we here at Colonial Life, we look a lot like the communities in terms of ethnic groups and racial diversity. We depend on our employees to help guide our thinking around how we should be responding today and how we should be proactively planning. So we have a employee resource group that's specifically focused on race and ethnicity. And they've been extremely helpful to us in just learning more about their expectations and providing input into our plans. They proactively recently found a group called Race to the Table SC. And Kim, you talked about courageous conversations. We had Race to the Table SC work with us to promote some courageous conversations among our employees, among a very diverse group of employees. And that's just the latest thing we've done based on input from our employee groups, but really, really productive conversation there. We also have been examining our hiring and promotion practices. And earlier this year, we made a commitment that going forward, before we hire or promote anyone, we will insist on a diverse talent pool of candidates. We'll also redact any names from resumes that might cause unintentional screening or unintentional bias or unconscious bias from influencing that process. Probably more importantly, though, than having a diverse talent pool, is data tells us that unless you also have a diverse interview panel, you probably won't change outcomes that much. So we're really focused on ensuring that we have diverse interview panels now. We're working with a number of HBCUs in town. We appreciate the relationship with Benedict here, and we're working with a number of others as well to make sure that we're recruiting in the right way. We made a commitment recently to begin reporting on our progress, because despite those changes, we still aren't where we need to be. I mentioned that we look like the community in a lot of ways, but when you start looking at levels of leadership, we're not appropriately represented across all of our groups, ethnic groups here, and we've got work to do there. So we're beginning to report to our employees on the progress we're making. And while it's helpful to have those reports, it also helps hold us accountable. The mayor mentioned the importance of being intentional, and we believe in that as well. You have to be intentional, and by being more transparent, it helps people hold you accountable to that. Over the last 3 years, we've had all of our leaders attend Leading Inclusively training, and these are not 1-hour seminars. These are immersive 3 to 6 month programs for each of our individual leaders where they get feedback about their own style based on some data and reporting that's both objective and subjective. So a lot of work going on in terms of the work we're doing with our employees and our leadership group. We also are working hard to make sure we're providing community support the right way. Colonial Life for many years has been a strong supporter of the community. And when I became CEO about 5 years ago, I worked with our community resource team, and we began looking at the investments we're making in the community and wanted to make sure that we were investing more in education, and within our education budget, really targeting underrepresented and underserved groups. And so I'm proud of the progress we've made there. There's still more to do on that front. Although Colonial Life is a much, much smaller company than Bank of America, we did commit to a social justice fund this year and seeded it with $500,000. And we are also asking our employees to get involved and to make their own contributions to that fund. And we're going to match contributions that they make on top of the commitment that we've made. And then, Kim, I think your question about culture is a really important one. What we see is that when you have more diverse people at the table, it may take a little longer to get to a decision. You may have to have people who are better at facilitating discussion because you're not having everyone head the same direction. But you end up with better outcomes. And I think by ensuring that as a company, we're doing our part to influence the community to be as diverse as possible and to be as inclusive as possible. And there's an important distinction there. I think everyone on this call understands that. I heard a quote that brought it home for me, which is diversity is being asked to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. And I think that there's a lot to that. So my view is that the more diversity we can create, the more we'll have a better culture because we'll make better decisions both at the individual level, at the business level, and across our community.
All of those important initiatives, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your thoughtful focus around diversity and inclusion at Colonial. We really appreciate that very much. Leslie, let's talk a little more about the $1 billion commitment. A $1 billion commitment is a big number, and it makes it really hard to bring it close to home when you think about such big numbers. Talk a bit about how we plan to localize that. What does it look like? You know, how do we implement the programs at a local level that makes real difference, that really does help with change? So give us some insight around that.
Happy to. So a couple of things more broadly. The intention behind the $1 billion commitment is really that those funds and those efforts will be divided equally between philanthropic grants and being able to provide money to communities that need it philanthropically, but the other half flowing through our businesses in ways that really help to better serve underserved communities and those who need it most. So we really want to be able to focus on creating and investing in sustainable solutions when deploying the capital over the course of the next 4 years. I think that broadly what we will all see is a lot of focus actually on educational support to also help really shore up the ability for people in underserved communities, particularly Black and Hispanic people, to enter the workforce on better economic footing and be able to then leverage that to create more sustainable communities as well. So locally, one of the things that we've actually already done is provide $40,000 to Homeless No More. That money was granted to them in order to really be able to focus on job reskilling for residents and also be able to support childcare needs for residents while they are actually working on the job reskilling and eventually working as well. In addition to that, we've also provided 2,000 masks to Homeless No More, in keeping with our commitment around some of this money really being focused on health, which we also know, the coronavirus, in addition to many other health related issues, differentially has impacted the African American community in particular, but also the Hispanic and Native American communities as well. Along the line of masks, actually locally, we've already provided upwards of 10,000 masks to nonprofit organizations to help get them to vulnerable people who need the most but may not be able to acquire PPE as easily as others. And we'll continue to look for some ways to be able to support communities with PPE, with testing needs, that sort of thing. As far as the ongoing process over the course of the 4 years, really the process we'll leverage locally to make sure that we best understand how it is that we can impact the community is we really leverage our local leadership team here, led by Kim, to help with ideation, with thought leadership, and helping to identify engagement opportunities and events, things that will help us better understand how it is that we should be informing grant funding, providing guidance to local organizations as well about how it is that they can get access to some of the grant funding that we have. But we really will leverage a lot of the input from local organizations to better understand where the needs are, as we have over the last several years when we do community needs assessments and things like that. And with that input, we'll be able to best understand where it is that we want to direct those funds. The last thing I'll highlight is as an example of some of the money that flows through our businesses, I'll highlight our community homeowner commitment program, which I think is a great example of something we've been doing in order to really address some of the common barriers to home ownership that we see in communities. And so it really helps a lot with addressing things like providing people with low down payment loans or with down payment and closing cost assistance. We also have expert lending officers and partnerships with a lot of community organizations in order to really help bring together, whether that's helping people in the community prepare for home ownership if they're not quite there yet, or working with local organizations to create more affordable housing by maybe it's purchasing vacant homes and, partnering with local small business owners and other local community organizations to rehab those properties and be able to create affordable housing, or helping people who are in existing housing with low-cost loans to be able to improve the housing that they're in. So there are a variety of ways that, through our community homeowner commitment program, that we are actively looking to support the community.
So thanks for that, Leslie. I will say to the business leaders that are on the phone today, this is not something that we as a company want to do alone. In fact, we really want this to act as a catalyst for all of the business community to come together, for us to have the right conversations about the things that need to be done in our community, and for all of us to come together and help fund some of these initiatives. So I look forward to working with so many of you on the phone and on Zoom today to really work through this over the coming 4 years as we really assess how and where our community might be best served with some of the funding. So Leslie, thanks for the insight around that. So Mayor, back to you. It has been said numerous times that words without action is just a conversation. And clearly we want this to be more than a conversation. We want to make sure that there's a sense of urgency that really is a catalyst to action. So talk to us about what you all are doing in your administration to bring around positive change.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you both, Leslie and Tim, for your comments and your presentation. We're doing a lot. We're running on multiple tracks at the very same time, recognizing, and I think if I probably have a chance to say a few more things before we get off this call, but I would really impress upon everyone, all of our business leaders on this call, to recognize the point in history in which we stand. We are living in historic times right now. I mean, the decisions that we make will not only determine the destiny of our communities, but I also believe our companies. I think that making sure that we get past this experiential blindness that we all have, and we all have experiences that limit our focus and our ability to see every set of circumstances the way that we might want to. And that's why it's so important, as Tim said earlier, to have a diverse set of eyes around the table, helping peel back an onion and solve a problem. A lot of our companies talk about it, but very rarely do it, and very rarely do you see that that diversity reflected in C-suites or on boards of directors. I think it's so important that we use this as an opportunity, because there are shifting sands that have been accelerated in some ways in which we probably haven't thought about as much. Obviously, we're all teleworking. I'm in my home right now, as some of you may be as well. But this period in which we're living, where we've watched trends around automation and AI and advanced machine learning rapidly changing, teleworking changing, we've all been studying. The chamber has been leading discussions around the future of work and what that means. Well, it means that folks who are in the bottom quintiles, the two bottom quintiles of American society, have been losing their footing significantly for the last several decades. That has been accelerated rapidly. People in those two quintiles are overwhelmingly Black and brown. So what are we doing as we watch this contraction of the American society? Some of us are old enough to remember Kodak. Kodak in 1963 had 75,000 employees at the very same revenue scale. 50 years later, in 2013, Facebook had 1/10 of that amount of employees. We've got to find ways, thoughtful ways, to make sure that we move forward and that we bring all of our Americans together forward with us, so that we remain competitive and we remain a society where everyone has a shot, where everyone has an opportunity to live up to their God-given promise and also to participate in the American economy. We have at the city, Kim, obviously, when I served as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we established a Mayors and Business Leaders Institute on inclusive and compassionate cities. We've taken those very same values here at the City of Columbia, establishing a commission on compassion and inclusion, and really looking at our long-term strategic plan and threading through everything that we do, the values of inclusion, things that some people may seem as purely symbolic, changing our city flag to speak to the values of inclusion and us coming together, to also some very hard decisions that will ensure that not only our contracting, as I mentioned, speak to the values of inclusion, but our staff reflects it. I had the pleasure, Tim, of being in your spot as of yesterday. I was a chair-elect of the chamber when I was elected mayor, and decided that I didn't want to aspire those lofty heights, and I got kicked out as chair-elect when I was elected mayor. But when I served in the chamber board, I won the Athena Award because of my service at the Department of Probation, Parole, and Pardon Services. I'll just use this as an example. I served Governor Hodges, told him I'd serve him for 3 years. I would not be there for the entire 4-year term. But when I got to the agency, there was a culture there that, as a law enforcement agency, did not reward women for their work. Women's salaries and pay or were significantly depressed. It was crystal clear. We had to rectify that. I determined that before we left, we were going to make an affirmative step to try and make sure that we were able, through leadership, to address that issue long term. So the only thing I could think of doing was to make sure that every single one of my deputy directors at the agency were female, so that when I left, we would have a female executive at the agency. And we wanted to, after I left, Governor Hodges selected my successor. She was an incredibly talented lady, and we've had several since then. We've got to make sure that as we live in these historic times, that our actions reflect the gravity of the day. We get past our experiential blindness. We reach out in very inclusive ways. We bring everyone to the table. And if we do, not only will we have I think, a more solid community, more thoughtful community, but it will add shareholder value. We'll make great decisions. Right now, the world in which we live right now, one bad decision, one uninformed decision can severely hamper and damage a brand. You get good people around the table with different experiences, different ideas. It's amazing how edifying and stronger it can make your company or city.
Thanks, Mayor. So, Tim, I'm just going to have you expand on what the mayor just said. Talk to us about how you think inclusion will have a difference on the bottom line of the company.
Yeah, I think Mayor Benjamin did a great job of talking about it just now. I think what I would add is that the more diversity you can get into a room, the better. And some people shy away from that because it's easier to make a decision when everybody's in agreement. It's harder to facilitate a meeting when there's debate and dialogue, disagreement. And I think as leaders, we have to set the expectation that we want that debate, we want the disagreement, we want the dialogue. And then it's also important, and we've taught our teams this, it's important not to have a winner come out of the debate. It's important to have people build on each other's ideas and have a collective idea that you move forward with. Pre-COVID, minority-owned businesses and female-owned businesses were the two fastest growing business segments across the United States. I'm sure that COVID's had an impact on that, but yet those business segments are still growing and they're still very, very important. And if you don't have a diverse group of people thinking about the solutions that you're creating for all of your customers, then you're going to create solutions that don't fit for all of your customers. And for me, that's the selfish reason to do it. It's the right thing to do to begin with. But from a bottom line perspective, the more you can have a solution that represents the things that all business owners will want and need, or decision makers inside businesses who are buying our products and services, the better.
So I tried to unmute myself and it tried to take me to Facebook. So I don't know what just happened, but it's great to be back with all of you. The joys of technology and doing events virtually, right? So Leslie, talk about how a company can best ensure a work environment that welcomes and respects everyone.
Well, actually, I should probably thank Tim because I think that he laid out a lot of the key steps and things that companies can do to really help create a more inclusive environment that does welcome and respect everyone and really create an environment where people feel valued and heard. First and foremost, it starts at the top. You really need to have the leader or leaders of your organization setting the tone and walking the talk, so to speak, and making sure that they are, in fact, not just telling people what they expect, but they are also demonstrating what they expect and holding people accountable to that. It's also very important that leaders are clear about exactly what it is that is expected within the culture that they are trying to create at at that particular company or business, and are consistent regarding how issues are addressed that are counter to the culture that the organization is trying to address. You know, and it really starts, you know, we shouldn't assume that all leaders or all people know what you mean when you say, you know, it's important that our culture is an inclusive one. So things like education and training are important, and it's not likely to be a one and done type of situation. It's more of an ongoing learning, ongoing education for leaders and for organizations regarding inclusion and the things that you are looking in the environment that you're planning to create in your organization. It's also important to make sure that you're celebrating the differences of people versus trying to homogenize, you know, the culture and the workforce that you have in your organization. You know, not overlooking differences, but again, celebrating those and recognizing those and helping everyone understand why it is that differences are valued, which includes things like active listening as leaders and, you know, very much as Tim was describing, making sure that, you know, you are recognizing and celebrating and valuing different points of view in order to reach more collective decisions and making sure that everyone, again, feels like they are heard, creating safe spaces for people who are underrepresented in the organization to be able to express what it is that they need, what it is that, you know, that would help improve their experience in an organization. Many companies do that through leveraging their employee resource groups, which is a great way to do it, but there are a variety of ways, you know, depending on the size of your organization, and ARG may not be the solution for you. It could be something a lot less formal, but making sure that all employees feel comfortable expressing what it is that would help improve their experience without fear of retribution of any kind, or feeling like what it is that they are asking for is not well received or not valued. Another thing is setting goals, being very specific, and in order to really create an environment that does embrace accountability, it starts with everybody understanding what it is that they're accountable for. So think about the goals that your organization has, whether it's related to hiring talent, hiring a diverse workforce, retaining your diverse workforce, or advancing that diverse workforce throughout your organization. Think about representation, not just in aggregate at your organization, but also throughout, as Tim was saying. You know, you think about leadership levels throughout the organization, the composition of boards, things like that. And, you know, is that representative of the populations that you are serving, and the populations of that in the community that you're in? And, you know, one of the other things that Tim mentioned that I think is also important is data, you know, which goes hand in hand with goals. But I think that the more deliberate you are, just like any other business related issue it is that you are trying to address, you know, the better your data, the better you are to pinpoint where your opportunities are, and the better you are to be able to focus on those and improve them. So I think that all of those things really help to create an environment where ultimately your employees and your customers or clients feel welcome, feel respected, and want to continue to thrive and do business with your organization.
Thank you. So I have a question for all three of you. And Leslie, since you just finished talking, I'll just start with you so you don't have to mute. But I'd like for all three of you to answer this particular question. what lesson have you learned in your own journey that you would share with the rest of us as we work together toward this long-term change that we so sincerely need in our country? So, Leslie.
Thanks, Kim. I think that the lesson that sticks with me the most, really, it's one that has come to light for me over the last couple of months, is that, for years, I've been in the workforce for more than 20 years. And throughout my career, I've spent a lot of time, I've been conditioned really to make sure the people around me are comfortable. And it takes a lot of forms, but I have certainly realized that it doesn't necessarily serve me or serve others well if that is what is happening. And you cannot, it's not really possible to bring your whole self to work or be your full self if that's one of the things that you're spending time doing. And so, thinking about why that is. And, I think that we do have to all get more comfortable with being uncomfortable, with having conversations that make us uncomfortable. Talking about race, racial equality, racial inequality, racial equity in the workplace for a very long time has been taboo. Even when I think that companies and leaders have said that it isn't, it still was. And a lot of people really shied away from the topic. And I think over the last couple of months, people have not necessarily been able to do that. And I think that's actually a really good thing, because it will, without dialogue, it's difficult for people to create broader understanding. And without understanding, I don't think that we'll really be able to change things in the way that we need to, and that our communities need us to, that our families need us to. So I think that has probably been the thing that has been my biggest lesson learned and embraced, and the thing that I'm certainly encouraging others to make sure that they are doing more of, which is having these conversations, even when it's something that you're not really sure that you should be doing or aren't really comfortable doing, or you're afraid you're not going to say the right thing, or am I going to offend someone, or is this appropriate, and will this damage our relationship? I think you just have to set all of that aside and give each other some grace and have a little bit of faith in your fellow citizens, and really dive in and attack it so that you can understand each other and figure out a good way forward.
Powerful. Tim?
Yes, I'll pick up where Leslie left off. For me, it's the difference between listening and trying to actually experience. And although I obviously will never be able to experience what a person of another racial or ethnic group experiences, there is a significant difference between sitting in an office in a sterile environment and listening to people share their experiences and getting involved. And I've tried to proactively get involved in nonprofits that support people of different racial and ethnic groups. I've tried to go into the community and visit the schools and see the difference between the schools that tend to be in places that are primarily of Black or Hispanic racial groups versus those that are in white communities. I think the more we can all try to not just listen, but learn and experience something that someone else is experiencing, and try to really understand it rather than give it some surface level conversation. And that's where those courageous conversations are so important. That's where being uncomfortable, being willing to be uncomfortable is so important. But what I find is that all the hate and all the negative energy that we hear in the environment is because people aren't really trying to experience what someone who is very different is experiencing and trying to truly understand that. No, it's not just listening, it's how do you try to put yourself in that other person's shoes? And if you do, I think you'll be committed to the things we talked about being intentional, about being accountable, about being committed, about making a difference. And when I look around this virtual room at all the people here, and I think if we all are intentional and committed and accountable, we can do great things across the Midlands and across the state.
So true. Mayor?
Thank you, Kim. I'd say amen to both of those comments. I will say that I knew it already. My mom and grandparents and my daddy taught me, but there's power in prayer. I've learned to constantly spend some time looking within and looking above for guidance as we try to make some very difficult decisions. I am that same little geek from Mr. Markowski's 6th grade class who still keeps lists of everything that he learns. I do, and so you asked that question, and I won't go through the entire list, but I mentioned experiential blindness. It's so important that in this age in which we're all sometimes yelling at each other, that we stop and actually listen to each other. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And understanding that 2 people equally yoked, good people, can see the same issue very differently. So how do we stop and listen to one another? And particularly in the moment in which we live right now, so many folks who have not had a chance to have their voice heard. And sometimes we just need to be quiet and listen and walk up to a situation. I had some time with some of the young protesters at the state capitol not long after we had, the protests at the police department on May 30th. And I sat with them. I just said, tell me your stories. I want to know why you're here. And none of them were there for the same reason. Everyone was there for a different reason. And, but I needed to learn to accept a humble position of not feeling I had all the answers. So the humility in not knowing, the humility in constantly learning, it's something that I believe we all need to adopt. I've learned to not mistake confidence with competence. Just because folks, you stick your chest out and you think you know the answer, that's not the case. We become edified when we learn from each other. I do believe that policy matters to enforce systemic or cultural change. So it's one thing to talk about something, you also have to be about something. You have to make sure you put structures in place to try and ensure that we almost beat back against some of our own cultural tendencies. So I believe policy matters. We talked a good bit about data. A few of us have mentioned it, and I think it's so important. The reality is that the data bears out in almost every one of our industries. Those are challenges that we face as a society. So I'd say let's be data driven, and God we trust. Everyone else give me data, as Deming would say. But let's also make sure we humanize that data, and that we understand. We begin to tell stories that help illuminate that, because we respond much more to stories than we do to data. Let's get the data. Let's trust the data because it is what it is. But we've got to make sure we humanize it and begin to tell the personal narrative that brings folks together. I've learned, and I'm just being frank, I've learned that dinner with my family is a pretty awesome thing. The period that we've all been living in right now, the opportunity to be sequestered or required to stay home at times has been personally edifying for my family. I would encourage each and every one of you, if you haven't taken advantage of this opportunity, this moment, as challenging as it is, spend some time with the people who love you in spite of yourself. It's amazing. I've learned that there are so many trees and birds and everything else in my neighborhood that I never ever noticed over the last 10 years or so. So this is an opportunity to take care of your spiritual health, your emotional health, your mental health, your physical health, the one temple God gives you. And this is an opportunity for all of us to become better. And as a result of becoming better, then we can make our communities better. Last thing I'd say, you can watch two cities, again, very similar. I've learned that our decisions will indeed determine our destiny. That two cities that started on this journey, beginning of the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, the economic challenges that we're facing. Two cities that started in the very same position, depending on what types of decisions you make, will be in very different places next year and the year after that. So decisions truly determine our destiny. So we've got to determine how, as a community, and every community has to determine how we're going to take this pain and all this passion and direct it in the right way so that we actually make some progress at the end of the day. So I apologize for going through all of my thoughts, but those are the things that I'm trying to come out of this better and stronger and more resilient, and make sure our community is as well when we come out of the other side, and we will come out of the other side. I firmly believe that. Thank you.
So you said a lot there that is incredibly important, but the compassion that we need to feel, that the human stories that we are hearing through this really do bring us to compassion. And compassion leads us to a different place for discussion and dialogue than hate. And so telling the stories, at least in my mind's eye, is incredibly important, because human to human, we can learn so much, from one another. And so thank you for sharing that. Carl, I know that we're getting close to time here, but let's see, is there a particular question that's come in that you would like one of the panelists to answer?
Yeah, thank you. There was a great question earlier on from Jason Headley. What's being done to retain diverse talent? I know a couple people touched on that being something that we need to be intentional about in goal setting, but specifically, I guess Leslie or Tim, could y'all address what you're doing in the workforce, and Steve, what y'all are doing at the city?
Sure, I'm happy to start. A couple of the things that we're doing, we have some leadership programs that are very specific and focused on leadership for diverse talent, sponsorship, mentorship for diverse talent within the organization, providing opportunities for exposure as well as development, which leads to people being able to continue to have careers with us, that being able to continue their career with us and find additional opportunities internally that they are interested in. We also spend a lot of time, quite frankly, listening and getting a better understanding for what it is that all of our employees really are looking for in order to keep them engaged, be able to better understand what it is that will keep them with us. And so we do try to focus on making sure that not only do we hear those things, but we then turn around and are able to act on the feedback that we get, whether it's through our annual employee survey or in less formalized fashions. But from a retention perspective, I'd say I think some of the most impactful things that we do are really the more targeted development opportunities that provide exposure, that provide mentorship, and that ultimately lead to better pull through and additional opportunities for talent within the organization, because typically that's why people leave. They're in search of better opportunities.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the importance of professional development programs, leadership programs, making sure you have diverse talent in those programs is incredibly important. I love what Leslie said about mentorship and sponsorship programs, and ensuring that your mentorship and sponsorship programs include diverse talent, and that people see that there are opportunities for them to get from where they are in the organization to where they want to be. I think for us, it's been about being very intentional about ensuring that we have racially and ethnically diverse people in professional level roles, because what we see at Colonial Life is far less turnover in the professional roles, places like underwriting, finance, accounting, claims. And we typically have more turnover in some of the administrative kinds of roles. And so ensuring that we have more diverse people in the professional roles is very important to us as well. But it is a challenge. It's something that, as I mentioned earlier, we're making progress, but we still have work to do. This is one of those areas.
Yeah, I think those are both solid and very direct answers. I'd say pay people, pay them equitably, value them, obviously develop leaders, formal programs, and also the informal programs that allow people to advance in the different cultures that our businesses represent. That pipeline that Tim just referenced, particularly in some of the much harder skills. I mean, I'm not sure how many actuaries we have in the city, for example, but developing that pipeline of talent and assuring that it's a diverse pipeline. And lastly, I'd say back to where I started, also ensuring that the gateway is open, depending on which statistics you look at. We have not all serious crimes, but we have probably as many people in the country right now who have criminal records, some minor, some major, as those who have college degrees. So we have significant talent on the sidelines that some for decisions they made before they finished puberty. How do you bring them into the American economic mainstream? America has a lot of challenges, a lot of faults. I still believe it's the greatest democratic nation in the history of the world. I believe in capitalism. I believe that if you give someone a real opportunity, particularly those who may not have had those opportunities afforded to them early in life, didn't have maybe the fortunate surroundings that some of us came from, they'll rise to the occasion. So we've got to make sure that the gateway is open to more and more people. If we do that, then I think we'll wind up with more diverse and stronger workforces as well.
Thank you all. I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. I want to thank you for your candor, your openness, your willing to have this conversation. I would say today is not the end of a conversation. In fact, it is just the beginning of a conversation that we all need to be having with our families, in our businesses, in our churches, really across the board. The conversations matter. They make a difference. And think about how you meet people where they are, how you find a way to have the compassion, as the mayor talked about, and get there. So I'd like to leave you with this. Think about your ABCs. Since school has started this week, that makes it an easy way to end the conversation. Think about awareness. You know, acknowledge that the subject of race, social, social injustice, disability, age, sexual orientation, all those things can be uncomfortable conversations. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Behavior. Decide where we can affect the greatest change, and then leverage the platform to influence the change. This is about making sure that our behaviors match and that we have a sense of urgency and making a difference here. And then finally, C, culture. Hold yourself accountable for the culture that you create around you, and the places and spaces where you find discussions with your colleagues will make a big difference in their lives. So to all of you who joined us this morning, thank you for being here. To our panelists, thank you very, very much. Carl, to you in the Columbia Chamber, thank you for hosting this powerful conversation. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good day.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you.